Hey there, friends. I know I'm just an old storyteller spinning tales, but if you enjoy stories like these, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Your support makes this storytelling journey so much more exciting. Before we dive into today's stories, here's a quick disclaimer: the content presented in this video is purely for entertainment purposes. The theories and stories discussed here are entirely speculative and not backed by any evidence or proof. Viewer discretion is advised. Now let's jump into today's mysterious and chilling tales. Segment 1: Introduction to the Dark Web. In the dim glow of her computer screen, Sarah felt a familiar thrill rush through her veins. It was late, and while most of her friends were tucked away in their beds, she was diving deep into the labyrinthine corridors of the internet, the dark web. To her, it was more than just a hidden part of the web. It was a realm of secrets, a place where reality blurred into something darker and more sinister. Sarah had always been fascinated by the stories she read online, tales of forbidden knowledge, lost souls, and unspeakable horrors lurking just beneath the surface. She had heard whispers about people who had ventured too far into this digital underworld, only to emerge forever changed or not at all. But those were just stories, she told herself. She was careful. She used a VPN, accessed sites through Tor, and never revealed her identity. As she navigated through various forums and marketplaces, she stumbled upon a thread titled "What Lies Beneath." The title alone sent chills down her spine. It was an innocuous enough name, but there was something about it that beckoned her to click. The thread was filled with cryptic messages and ominous warnings from users who claimed to have uncovered something terrifying. "Do not dig too deep," one post read. "You won't like what you find," another user chimed in. "I saw things that still haunt me. Just walk away." But curiosity gnawed at Sarah like a persistent itch. What could be so frightening that it drove people away? She scrolled through the comments, each more unsettling than the last. Some spoke of an underground network that trafficked in secrets, hidden truths about the world that were never meant to see the light of day. Others hinted at a physical location tied to these secrets, a place buried beneath the city where unimaginable horrors awaited those brave enough to seek them out. Her heart raced as she read one particularly chilling post. "If you want to know what's really going on beneath your feet, look for the old subway station at 42nd Street. They say it's been abandoned for decades, but some say it's not empty at all." The user claimed they had seen strange lights flickering from within its depths during late-night explorations. Intrigued and unnerved, Sarah decided to investigate further. She spent hours researching the old subway station, piecing together its history, how it had been closed off after a series of unexplained disappearances in the 1980s. Local legends spoke of ghostly figures roaming its darkened halls and whispers echoing in the silence. It became clear that this place was more than just an abandoned station. It was steeped in mystery and dread. That night, sleep eluded her as she imagined what lay hidden beneath the city streets, what secrets were waiting for someone like her to uncover. The allure of discovery tugged at her mind like an insistent whisper. She felt an inexplicable pull toward that forsaken station, as if something deep within its shadows called out specifically for her. The next day, armed with nothing but a flashlight and her phone for navigation, Sarah made her way to 42nd Street. The entrance to the old subway station was concealed behind a crumbling brick wall covered in graffiti, a forgotten relic among the bustling city life above. She hesitated for a moment, feeling a wave of apprehension wash over her. But then she remembered the stories, the thrill of uncovering hidden truths, and steeled herself. As she descended into the darkness, she could feel the air grow colder around her. The faint smell of mildew mixed with something metallic lingered in the dampness of the tunnel. Sarah flicked on her flashlight, illuminating peeling posters from decades past that clung stubbornly to the walls like ghosts refusing to let go. Each step echoed ominously in the silence as she ventured deeper into the station's bowels. The flickering light from her flashlight cast eerie shadows that danced along the walls, creating shapes that seemed almost alive in their movement. She felt as if she were being watched. Every instinct screamed at her to turn back. But curiosity pushed her forward. As she reached what appeared to be an old ticket booth, Sarah noticed something odd, a faint glow emanating from behind it. Heart pounding in her chest, she approached cautiously, peering around the booth's edge. What she saw made her breath hitch in her throat. There were symbols etched into the concrete floor, strange runes that pulsed with an otherworldly light. They seemed to hum softly, resonating with an energy that felt both ancient and alive. In that moment, Sarah realized this was no ordinary subway station. It was a threshold between worlds, a gateway to something beyond comprehension. Her mind raced with possibilities as she knelt down to examine them closely. What did they mean? Who had carved them here, and why? But before she could ponder further, a low rumble echoed through the tunnel, a sound so deep it reverberated through her bones. Instinct kicked in. She scrambled back from the booth just as shadows began to swirl around her feet like tendrils reaching out from below. Panic surged within her as she turned to flee, but found herself frozen in place by an unseen force. The glow intensified as whispers filled the air, voices overlapping one another in a cacophony of dread and despair. They beckoned her closer, yet warned her away all at once. Leave now, they seemed to chant in unison. But before Sarah could make sense of what was happening, everything went dark. This segment sets up an engaging premise filled with suspense and intrigue while introducing key elements that will be explored further in subsequent parts of your story. Segment 2: The Discovery. Darkness enveloped Sarah, smothering her senses. The whispers faded, replaced by a deafening silence that pressed against her ears. She blinked, trying to adjust to the absence of light, her heart racing as adrenaline coursed through her veins. Panic surged within her, urging her to move, to escape whatever unseen force had gripped her. Suddenly, a flicker of light ignited in the distance. It was faint, but beckoned her like a distant star in an endless void. With trembling hands, Sarah pushed herself to her feet and stumbled toward it, each step echoing in the oppressive silence. The air felt thick with anticipation, as if the very walls were holding their breath. As she drew closer, she realized the light emanated from a small alcove at the end of the tunnel. Cautiously, she approached, her flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. What she found made her blood run cold. In the alcove stood a makeshift altar adorned with an array of strange objects. Candles burned low, their wax pooling like tears on the stone surface. Photographs of missing persons tacked haphazardly to the wall. And a large book bound in what appeared to be leather, its cover cracked and worn with age. The pages were filled with handwritten notes and sketches that sent chills down her spine. Sarah reached for the book, compelled by an irresistible urge to uncover its secrets. As she flipped through its pages, she realized it contained rituals and incantations, dark rites meant to summon forces from beyond. The drawings depicted grotesque figures and symbols that mirrored those etched into the floor. A sense of dread washed over her as she read snippets of text detailing sacrifices and offerings made to entities that thrived on fear and despair. "What is this place?" she whispered to herself, her voice trembling in the stillness. Before she could process what she had discovered, a sudden noise shattered the silence, a scuttling sound echoing from deeper within the tunnel. Her heart raced anew as she turned off her flashlight, plunging herself into darkness once more. The shadows felt alive around her, swirling with an energy that made her skin crawl. She strained to listen, trying to discern what lurked in the depths of the station. The scuttling grew louder, accompanied by a low growl that sent shivers down her spine. It was close, too close. Instinctively, Sarah backed away from the altar, feeling for the wall behind her as she sought an escape route. But before she could turn back toward the exit, a figure emerged from the shadows, a creature unlike anything she had ever seen. It was humanoid, yet grotesquely distorted. Its skin was pale and stretched tight over its bones, glistening as if coated in something slick and unnatural. Its eyes were hollow voids that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. A mouth twisted into a cruel grin opened wide, revealing rows of jagged teeth that glinted menacingly in the dim light. Frozen in terror, Sarah felt a primal urge to flee, but where could she go? The creature advanced slowly, deliberately, its movements fluid yet unnerving. It seemed to relish in her fear, feeding off it like a predator savoring its prey. "Leave this place," it rasped in a voice that echoed like gravel scraping against stone. "You do not belong here." The words pierced through Sarah's paralysis like a dagger. She turned on her heel and sprinted back toward the entrance, adrenaline propelling her forward as panic clawed at her throat. The echo of her footsteps mingled with the creature's growls behind her, a haunting symphony of terror that drove her faster. As she reached the threshold of light spilling into the tunnel from above, Sarah glanced back one last time. The creature stood at the edge of darkness, watching her with those empty eyes, its grin widening, as if it relished in her escape. Bursting out into daylight felt surreal after being engulfed by darkness for so long. She stumbled onto 42nd Street, gasping for breath as reality crashed over her like icy water. The bustling city around her seemed oblivious to what lay beneath its feet, a hidden world steeped in horror. Shaken but determined to make sense of what had happened, Sarah rushed home and locked herself inside. She sat at her desk, the same desk where curiosity had led her down this dark path, and opened up her laptop again. The dark web awaited. It was time to dig deeper. She returned to the thread about what lies beneath, desperate for answers. As she scrolled through comments filled with warnings and cryptic hints, one post caught her eye. "If you've seen it, you're marked." Her heart sank as realization washed over her. She wasn't just an observer anymore. She had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. She recalled those etched symbols glowing beneath the subway station floor. Their pulsing energy still lingered in her mind like an echo of dread. Determined not to be paralyzed by fear any longer, Sarah began piecing together information about those who had gone missing near 42nd Street over the years, their names scattered throughout news articles and police reports like breadcrumbs leading back to a dark truth. As night fell once more, Sarah found herself surrounded by stacks of papers filled with names and dates, each one representing a life lost or forever altered by whatever dwelled beneath their feet. Her research revealed a pattern. Every few years, someone vanished without a trace after venturing too close to that old subway station. But there was something else, an underground community that thrived on these disappearances, people who sought out forbidden knowledge and dark rituals in exchange for power or insight into realms beyond comprehension. With every click of her mouse and every new thread explored, Sarah felt herself slipping further down a rabbit hole lined with shadows, each piece of information drawing her closer to an inevitable confrontation with whatever lay beneath. Suddenly, an alert popped up on one of the forum's. New sightings reported at 42nd Street. Something is stirring. Her pulse quickened as she read on. Others claimed they had seen strange lights flickering at night near the station. Once more, whispers echoed through empty streets, warning them away from its depths. Driven by equal parts dread and determination, Sarah knew what she had to do next: return to that cursed place, armed not just with curiosity but knowledge and perhaps even allies who shared in this dark pursuit for truth. But deep down inside echoed one haunting question: would they all emerge unscathed? Or would they become just another name lost beneath those unforgiving streets? This segment builds tension and expands on Sarah's discovery while introducing new elements that will contribute to the overall narrative arc. Segment 3: The Unraveling Mystery. The night felt heavier than usual as Sarah prepared for her return to the old subway station. The air was thick with anticipation, and a sense of foreboding clung to her like a shroud. She gathered her supplies: a flashlight, a notebook filled with her research, and a small pocket knife, an item she hoped she wouldn't need but felt compelled to carry. She had reached out to a few online forums seeking others who had experienced similar phenomena. To her surprise, she received several responses from individuals who claimed they had encountered strange occurrences near 42nd Street. They shared stories of flickering lights, eerie sounds, and even sightings of shadowy figures lurking in the darkness. One user, going by the name Wanderer, offered to meet her at the station. They claimed to have first-hand knowledge of the rituals performed there and hinted at an underground network that sought to harness the power of whatever resided beneath the city. Sarah felt both excited and apprehensive. She was no longer alone in this pursuit, but what if Wanderer had ulterior motives? As she approached the subway entrance, her heart raced with a mix of fear and exhilaration. The city above buzzed with life, but down here, it was as if time stood still. The entrance loomed before her like a gaping maw, inviting yet foreboding. She took a deep breath and stepped inside. The darkness swallowed her whole, and she flicked on her flashlight, illuminating the damp walls that seemed to close in around her. Each step echoed ominously as she made her way back to the alcove where she had discovered the altar. The memories of that night flooded back, fear mingling with curiosity as she recalled the creature that had confronted her. As she reached the altar, Sarah found it untouched, no signs of disturbance since her last visit. But something felt different. An electric tension hung in the air, as if it were charged with anticipation. She set down her supplies and began to examine the symbols on the floor once more, tracing their intricate designs with her fingers. Suddenly, a voice broke through the silence. "You shouldn't be here." Sarah spun around to find Wanderer standing in the shadows, their face obscured by a hooded cloak. "Who are you?" she demanded, trying to keep her voice steady despite her racing heart. "I've been watching you," they replied cryptically. "You're drawn to this place like a moth to a flame. But you don't understand what you're dealing with." "What do you mean?" Sarah pressed, feeling a mix of anger and fear. Wanderer stepped closer, revealing their face a gaunt figure with deep-set eyes that seemed to glimmer with knowledge and something darker. "This place is alive," they said softly. "It feeds on fear and despair. Those who come here seeking answers often find themselves trapped in its web." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. "I'm not afraid," she insisted. "Then you're a fool," Wanderer replied bluntly. "You've already attracted its attention." Before Sarah could respond, a low growl echoed through the tunnel, a sound that sent waves of dread coursing through her body. The creature was back. Wanderer's expression shifted from caution to urgency. "We need to leave now." They grabbed Sarah's arm and pulled her toward an adjacent tunnel just as the shadows began to shift and coalesce into something more solid. As they ran deeper into the labyrinthine tunnels, Sarah felt panic rise within her chest. "What is it? What does it want?" "It wants your fear," Wanderer replied breathlessly as they navigated through narrow passages illuminated only by flickering lights overhead. "It thrives on those who seek knowledge without understanding its cost." They stumbled into a larger chamber filled with remnants of past rituals. Broken candles littered the ground alongside remnants of offerings long forgotten. In one corner lay remnants of torn photographs. Faces twisted in terror stared back at them from faded images. Wanderer turned to Sarah, urgency etched across their features. "We need to perform a binding ritual, a way to protect ourselves from its influence." "Do you know how?" Sarah asked desperately. "I've studied it," they replied, pulling out a small satchel filled with herbs and candles from beneath their cloak. "But we must act quickly before it senses our presence." As they prepared for the ritual, Sarah's mind raced with questions. What would happen if they failed? What if this creature was more than just a guardian of secrets? What if it was something far more malevolent? Wanderer began arranging candles in a circle while muttering incantations under their breath. Sarah joined in hesitantly, feeling an odd energy building around them as they worked together. The air grew thick with tension as shadows danced along the walls, flickering in rhythm with their chants. Suddenly, an icy wind swept through the chamber, extinguishing several candles at once. "Focus!" Wanderer shouted over the howling wind as they continued their incantation. But it was too late. The creature emerged from the darkness once more, its form shifting and writhing like smoke given shape. It loomed over them, eyes glowing with an insatiable hunger that pierced through Sarah's resolve. "Fools!" it hissed, its voice reverberating through the chamber like thunder. "You dare challenge me?" Sarah felt paralyzed by fear but remembered why she had come here, to uncover truth and protect herself from becoming another name lost beneath these streets. Gathering every ounce of courage within her, she shouted back at the creature, "We're not afraid of you." The creature paused for a moment, taken aback by her defiance, before letting out an ear-splitting roar that shook the very ground beneath them. Wanderer continued chanting furiously as Sarah joined in, her voice rising above their fear as they invoked ancient words meant to bind and protect against dark forces. The shadows writhed violently around them as if resisting their efforts. Tendrils reached out toward them like grasping hands desperate for release. With one final surge of energy, they finished their incantation together. The candles flared brightly before erupting into blinding light that enveloped them both. In an instant, everything went silent. When Sarah opened her eyes again, she found herself lying on cold concrete, not in the chamber but outside near the subway entrance under a starry sky. The air felt fresh against her skin. There was no sign of Wanderer or any trace of what had happened moments before. Confused and disoriented, she sat up slowly. Memories flooded back the altar, the creature, but now it all felt distant, as if it belonged to another life entirely. Had they succeeded, or had they merely escaped for now? Rising unsteadily to her feet, Sarah glanced around anxiously but saw no signs of danger lurking nearby, only silence enveloping 42nd Street, like a protective blanket over its hidden horrors below. But deep down inside echoed one haunting thought: whatever dwelled beneath would not forget. It would be waiting for another chance, a chance to reclaim what was rightfully its own. Determined not to let fear dictate her life any longer, Sarah took one last look at that forsaken entrance before turning away, a silent promise made within herself she would uncover every secret buried beneath those streets, until there was nothing left hidden in darkness. As she walked away from that cursed place into moonlit streets filled with life above ground, once more a flicker caught her eye, a shadow darting just beyond reach, a reminder that some doors should never be opened again. This segment heightens tension while exploring themes of fear and defiance against dark forces. It sets up further developments for your story's conclusion.
Segment 4: Confrontation and Resolution. The cool night air brushed against Sarah's skin as she walked away from the subway entrance, a mix of relief and dread swirling within her. The city felt alive, bustling with people unaware of the horrors lurking just beneath their feet. Yet, she couldn't shake the feeling that she hadn't truly escaped, that something was still watching her. Days turned into weeks, and Sarah tried to return to her normal life. She attended classes, met friends for coffee, and even attempted to forget about the dark secrets hidden in the depths of the subway. But every time she closed her eyes, she saw the creature's hollow gaze and felt its insatiable hunger.
The nightmares began almost immediately, visions of shadowy figures creeping through her dreams, whispers echoing in her ears as she wandered through endless tunnels. Each morning, she awoke drenched in sweat, heart racing as if she had just escaped a predator. It became clear that whatever had happened that night had left an indelible mark on her soul.
One evening, unable to bear it any longer, Sarah decided to confront her fears head-on. She returned to the dark web, determined to find answers about Wanderer and the creature that had haunted her since their encounter. Hours passed as she scoured forums and threads, piecing together fragments of information about others who had faced similar horrors.
Then she found a post titled "The Marked Ones." It detailed individuals who had encountered dark entities beneath the city, and how they were forever changed by their experiences. The stories were chilling. Many spoke of being followed or haunted by shadows that seemed to come alive in their presence. One particular comment caught her eye: "If you've seen it, you must confront it again. Only then can you break its hold."
Sarah felt a surge of determination mixed with fear. If this was true, then perhaps returning to the subway station was not just inevitable, it was necessary. She needed closure. She needed to reclaim her life from whatever darkness had seeped into it.
That night, armed with renewed resolve, she made her way back to 42nd Street. The city felt different this time, more oppressive, as if it sensed her intent. As she approached the entrance to the subway station, memories flooded back: the altar, the creature's menacing presence, but this time she felt a flicker of strength igniting within her.
Descending into the darkness once more felt like stepping into another world, a realm where reality twisted and turned in unsettling ways. The air grew colder as she moved deeper into the station, each step echoing ominously in the silence. When she reached the chamber where they had performed the binding ritual, Sarah found it just as they had left it: candles melted down to stubs and remnants of offerings scattered across the floor. But now there was a palpable energy in the air, a tension that made her skin prickle.
"Show yourself," she called out, her voice echoing through the chamber. "I'm not afraid of you anymore." For a moment, nothing happened. Silence enveloped her like a thick fog. But then shadows began to swirl around her feet. Coalescing into a familiar form, the creature emerged from the darkness once more, its hollow eyes fixed on her with an intensity that sent shivers down her spine.
"Foolish girl," it hissed, its voice reverberating through the chamber like thunder. "You think you can challenge me?" "I'm not here to challenge you," Sarah replied defiantly, stepping forward despite her fear. "I'm here to reclaim my life." The creature laughed, a sound that echoed with malice and mockery. "You think you can simply walk away? You are marked by your curiosity. You will never be free." With those words, it lunged at her with terrifying speed. But Sarah stood her ground. She remembered Wanderer's incantations, the words meant to bind dark forces and protect against their influence. Drawing upon every ounce of courage within her, she began chanting them aloud. By light and shadow intertwined, she recited fiercely, "I bind thee from this realm. You shall not claim what is not yours." The creature paused mid-attack, its form flickering as if struggling against an unseen force. Shadows writhed around them like serpents trying to escape their master's grasp. "Stop," it roared. But Sarah continued chanting louder, now her voice rising above its fury. "By those lost and those forgotten," she cried out passionately, "I reclaim my spirit. You have no power here." With each word spoken, light began to pulse from within her, a radiant energy that pushed back against the darkness surrounding them. The creature shrieked in agony as tendrils of shadow recoiled from Sarah's light. Suddenly, a blinding flash erupted from within her chest, a surge of energy that illuminated every corner of the chamber. The creature let out one final roar before being consumed by light, its form dissipated like smoke caught in a gust of wind. As silence fell once more around Sarah, she collapsed onto the cold stone floor, exhausted but exhilarated. The weight that had pressed down on her for weeks lifted like a heavy fog, dispersing under sunlight.
She had faced her fears and emerged victorious.
After catching her breath and gathering herself together again, Sarah made her way back toward the entrance, feeling lighter with each step taken away from that cursed place. As she ascended back into daylight above ground once more, the city alive with sounds of life, she knew deep down that she would never forget what lay beneath those streets. But now it was different. Now she held power over it rather than being its prey. In the days that followed, Sarah found solace in sharing her story online, connecting with others who had faced similar encounters beneath their feet. She became an advocate for awareness about hidden dangers lurking in shadows, encouraging others, not just to seek knowledge, but also respect for what lies beyond comprehension. Though echoes of darkness would always remain part of who she was, she learned to embrace them rather than let them define her existence entirely. And every once in a while, when walking through bustling streets above ground, she would glance back at 42nd Street, not with fear, but with understanding, a reminder that some doors should remain closed while others beckon exploration, but only when one is truly ready for what lies beyond. This final segment wraps up Sarah's journey, while emphasizing themes of empowerment and resilience against darkness. It leaves readers with a sense of closure, while hinting at ongoing mysteries beneath everyday life.